So hello again, good afternoon, colleagues and all other listeners. My name is Alexander Kalinin. I have been the head of CERT team in Group IB company, like for almost 10 years and a bit more, I think. Thank you for your time and opportunity to present our own report. One of my loved because it's on hype right now, and just a couple of basic things about the company and my team, because I think not all of you know about us. Group IB has been on the cybersecurity market for 18 years. Last week we had a birthday party inside actually. We started in Moscow, Russia, and I'm telling you from Moscow right now, but now we moved our headquarters to Singapore. And last year we opened European HQ office in Amsterdam. This year we have our more office in Dubai. So that if you want to see me, someone in person, choose from these countries and we will be more than happy to meet you there. Group IB has a large pool of services and products, from digital risk protection and computer forensic with threat hunting to technical protection of online portals such as banks, and the whole framework of protect customer networks from malicious files and targeted attacks with our own threat intelligence and threat hunting systems. All these services and products allows us to do our researches, and especially this one. And about my team, we help our clients with information security, incident management, provide recommendations, have all the necessary lines, tiers, and specialists for this inside the team, from analysts and reverse engineers to team leads and SOC architects with our own MSSP program, which is pretty popular now. Plus, we against phishing and malware. For this, we have membership in many associations. I think you know all of them. It's like First, Trust Introducer, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, APWG, Anti-Phishing Working Group, and on the territory of the Russian Federation, we have unique competencies in all Russian domain zones, helping this and other CERT colleagues. So if some of you have some problems with phishing resources, so for example, in .eu, you can just write to me on email and we will help you, I think, pretty quickly, less than for the 1 day, for free. And about the report, it provides information on the tactics, tools, and the infrastructure of the various. Our report's goal is to minimize the risk of the groups committing further illegal acts, suppress any such activities in a timely manner, and raise awareness among listeners. The report also contains indicators of compromise that organizations and specialists can use to check the networks for compromise, as well as recommendation on how to protect against future attacks. One thing most cybersecurity experts agree on is ransomware continues to be public enemy #1. It's no longer surprising that ransomware attacks are becoming more sophisticated and threat actors successful with every passing years. More and more players join this game, disrupting more and more businesses all around the world. Ransomware itself, as well as attackers, TTPs, become increasingly complex. Detection and analysis really tough. Traditionally, vulnerable institutions like universities, hospitals also became popular targets. There are just like some of them which were hit in the nearest period of time. Like terrifying prospect that emerged in 2020 was that ransomware attacks could potentially cost lives. Düsseldorf paramedics were unable to admit a 78-year-old patient to a nearby hospital because it was under a ransomware attack. They were forced to travel 20 miles to the next nearest medical facility, and this delay in treatment caused the patient's death. There are indicators that more ransomware groups will soon change tactics dramatically, from ransomware deployment to data exfiltration and extortion. The Maze group attacked Xerox and LG, stealing and publishing over 70 gigabytes of data after the companies refused to pay. Egregor continued to extort victims by posting exfiltrated data online. And most attacks on enterprises are human operated. So it's vital that defenders understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by threat actors that they can stop attacks at different stages of the attack life cycle. Like key findings is that ransomware operators are less concerned about the industry and more focused on scope and scale. That is why threat actors prefer to go after large enterprise networks. They hope to secure the greatest possible ransom. Profitable targets encourage threat actors to bring ransom demands to new heights. If in 2019 the average ransom was about $80,000, the average in 2020, because 2021 isn't finished yet, was some $170,000. But we may see the norm shift towards the millions of dollars soon enough. Corporate environments usually run not only Windows system, but also Linux, which has led to some threat actors adding corresponding versions to their arsenals. Ransomware as a service programs has become increasingly prevalent on underground forums. Long-standing e-crime actors who use commodity malware such as TreatBot, QuackBot, and Dridex help many ransomware operators obtain initial access to target networks. And the state-sponsored threat actors also began showing interest in big game hunting. Groups such as Lazarus and APT27 started to use ransomware during financially motivated operations. This is some kind of illustration of my previous speech that I think the third of all ransomware groups is like Revil, Egregor, and Maze, more than 36%. But it will be doesn't matter for you if you like if you will be recruited by DarkSide or Ragnar Locker, your own organizations. It's like statistics, such a thing. This one. This is some kind of ransomware which use different bots, like TreatBot used Rook, Conti, Rebel, RansomX, QuackBot used usually Prolog or Egregor, Doppelpaymer. But all details you will be available to see and download in our own pretty big, I think, report in PDF from our site. You will see the link later. Yes, as you can see, there are like two main primary vectors of compromise. It is external remote services and phishing. Phishing is still very popular in many cybercriminal groups, as well as on the bottom right corner, you see the like differentiating between ransomware as a service and different ransomware groups. Ransomware as a service is very popular right now on the many cybercriminal forums. And here is a MITRE ATT&CK heat map made by us. As more bright, that's where you see, like bright red, we see much more frequently than the yellow one. You can read this in this way. But as we remember, the heat map is very huge. The matrix is a very huge. The map is the same huge, I think, and has many tactics inside, and only two of them from MITRE are not in this list. It is reconnaissance and resource development. So we will talk now about just some more interesting tactical techniques. The full version again in the report. First one is initial access. Publicly accessible RDP servers are still the most common target for many ransomware operators. from down to reval with the COVID-19 pandemic requiring many people to work from home. The number of such servers grew exponentially. Many successful intrusions started from password guessing or credential stuffing. In many cases, ransomware was deployed after an RD connection and was made to a compromised server, followed by a lateral movement to one of the domain controllers. RDP servers are not the only external remote services targeted by ransomware threat actors with brute force attacks. Such attacks were also initiated against VPN appliances, like in multi-factor authentication. To deliver malware to the target hosts, attackers use phishing emails. In many cases, the threat actors employed the so-called threat hijacking techniques, which makes emails look as they were sent by a trusted party. The threat actors use phishing links to online services like Dropbox, Google Drive, and weaponized attachments in various formats, from common documents and spreadsheets, zipped executables, and scripts. They have used MITRE ATT&CK, Tribot, Quackbot, Buyer Bazaar, and other malware in campaigns. Some adversaries were more creative. An excellent example of creativity was the bad USB attack. Attacks conducted by Fin7, also known as Carbon, in March 2020. Me personally, mostly read about this in the books, but I've never seen like in the wild such a bot. In the previous year, the group mailed fake letters from Best Buy containing weaponized USB devices and a $50 gift card. The letter said that the recipient could spend the card on any goods from a list which stored on the device on this USB flash drive. Plugging the USB device into a computer executed a PowerShell command and led to a Griffon backdoor being downloaded and run. Fin7 joined the big game in 2020, starting from their collaboration with evil operators and moving to their own ransomware as a service program, DarkSide. Execution. As many adversaries often used malicious email attachments during the initial access stage, many different interpreters were also widely used, including PowerShell, Windows Command Shell, Visual Basic, and JavaScript. PowerShell was still widely used by many threat actors at points of the cyber kill chain. Dridex operators, for example, used it to download the initial payload from a compromised website. PowerShell also used by many ransomware samples to remove volume shadow copies from infected hosts, which can be useful sometimes when it encrypts you. Windows Command Shell was extremely popular as well, especially during the initial access stage. Persistence. The most popular techniques used by the attackers to provide persistence is, you see many of them. I think we will focus on just three of them. T57, it is registry run keys or startup folder, one of the most common persistence mechanism observed in 2020. Another was abusing features of WinLogon, which was used by Bazaar operators. T1053, creating a schedule, was the most common persistent mechanism observed during our own incident responses, engagements, and cyber threat research. Its popularity could be attributed to a wide variety of commodity malware used by many ransomware operators to gain an initial foothold. And T1078, the final persistence technique observed by us was to abuse valid accounts, as many intrusions started from unauthorized RDP access or exploiting a public-facing application. Threat actors obtained credentials with varying levels of privileges during initial access. Attackers used these credentials or those collected during the credentials access stage to obtain redundant access to the compromised infrastructure. Defense evasion. We witnessed cases of threat actors abusing background intelligence transfer service, or BITS here, to download malicious code silently and bypass defenses. Egregor ransomware affiliates use scripts with the following content to download and run ransomware payloads. Most threat actors disabled or modified security tools during the most exploitation phase. Many Dharma ransomware affiliates use PC Hunter and Process Hacker, I think you know all these programs, to identify and terminate security software. Also, masquerading technique is very popular in recent attacks. The experts also observed that malware or other tools used for post-exploitation were named after common Windows system executables. For example, some egregor affiliates renamed the rclone executable to swhost.exe and put it in the C Windows folder. Credential access. Many ransomware operators gained their initial foothold via RDP. I said this to obtain valid credentials. Threat actors used password guessing, password spraying, and credential stuffing mostly. Based on our engagements, the most popular tools for brute force attacks were NL brute and Hydra. In some cases, NL brute was also used to check whether the accounts obtained were valid enterprise-wide. Web browsers are common password store. Many of our clients use this way to store the passwords. So many threat actors developed the ability to extract credentials from them from the browsers. The Gremlin group, for instance, used a tool called Web Browser Pass View to extract passwords from such stores. Among all, credential dumping remains the most common technique used by ransomware operators to obtain valid privileged credentials and move laterally. Attackers usually used PROIDEA to dump local security authority subsystem service with SAS process memory. MITRE allowed adversaries to use various credential dumping subtechniques, including SAS memory, security account manager, LSA secrets, and hashed domain credentials. In some cases, attackers extracted the SAM from Windows registry. 7 technique in MITRE map is discovery, and next one and lateral movement. Like discoveries, ransomware operators focused on attacking corporate networks. Adversaries commonly collected information about Active Directory, including users, its groups, computers, domain trust relationships. One of the most common tools for collecting the aforementioned information was AD-Find. Another common tools for Active Directory contents was Bloodhound or Sharphound, which also allowed attackers to collect and analyze information about users, groups, and domain trust. And regarding lateral movement, Eternal Blue, widely known, was the most common vulnerability used for lateral movement. In addition, some threat actors involved in ransomware attacks exploited the zero logon last year vulnerability to establish a vulnerable net login session and gain domain administrator privileges, thereby enabling lateral movement. A common ransomware deployment that was PS exec abuse. As noted above, RDP was only the most common initial access vector, but also a common way to move laterally through the network. In their arsenals, some ransomware operators even had scripts for enabling RDP on remote hosts. They usually executed them via PSExec2. Exfiltration. Before performing exfiltration, many ransomware operators used common achieving utilities such as WinRAR or 7-zip, which is popular in many threat actors, to compress data for sure. Some adversaries like Maze split such archives into multiple parts so that the data could be exfiltrated without triggering security controls. So again, if you are like a security administrator and you see many archives like tons of them at the same day, it's not so a good marker for you. You have to see what's happening on this computer, for example. Ransomware operators did not blindly collect data. They knew that they were doing CLOP, OP ransomware, affiliates search for workstations that were used by top managers so that the most sensitive data could be collected for fire extortion. Exfiltrated data was usually posted publicly on a so-called data leak site. It is very good feed for us to collect the possible victims, the most active cybersecurity groups, and so on. Here is an example of DLS to doppelpaymer ransomware operators. Threat actors set up auctions before publishing exfiltrated data to DLS. A good example is a Rival Group, which has a special page on its DLS. It's on the second screen here. Operators are known to exfiltrate data, but they do not a DLS. They instead show the proof of exfiltration to the victim personally, not so publicly as DLS sites, or collaborate with other actors. So they pretty good work with each other. And it's like the last one, the impact in MITRE metrics. The main goal for ransomware operators was to encrypt data for impact. Many ransomware families were distributed through ransomware as a service programs. And since each program has multiple affiliates, there may be shifts in TTPs used by threat actors. Before actually deploying ransom, operators did their best to find and remove any available backups. So it will be impossible for the victim to recover encrypted data. Ransomware developers usually used strong encryption algorithms to make it impossible to decrypt files without the keys. Encryption algorithms used by the most active ransomware families that we observed are shown on the provided screenshot. Sometimes, but pretty seldom, we see like vulnerable algorithms still, but not from the famous like Old Rebel, Mesa, and so on. So mostly it is for new gamers in this game. Typically, two factors forced victims to pay ransomware operators. First was that companies had no backups to recover encrypted data. And the second was that sensitive data was exfiltrated and could be published online. I can say like of them. I mean, third factor is to collect the data which they lost because of this attack. But it's pretty similar to the first one. Although there were many public ransomware as a service programs, some groups did not see or didn't use ransomware as part of their disruptive attacks. Instead, they used built-in tools designed for full disk encryption, such as widely known BitLocker or open source tools like Descriptor. So again, legal instruments during the illegal attacks. Based on like Group IB's observations of the ransomware threat landscape, we have compiled the following list of tips for threat detections and hunting inside the network. Here are just some of them. It has to be a really huge list, but if you want to know how to prevent further infections, focus on the detection tips or get the complete guide to the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures of ransomware operators and groups based on MITRE ATT&CK. Please request the Ransomware Uncovered by the QR code on the last page or by the link here. It costs so to read this report. So tips here, not so deep technical, but you still can see that they're pretty useful to at least check all your internal infrastructures and computers. Here, Windows-based, but as I said, it doesn't matter because sometimes Linux-based machines are vulnerable for this too. So I think that's all from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask them all right now in the chat, or you can write an email to Kalinin, that is my surname, at groupib.com. You can find me in LinkedIn, on Twitter, you can do the same. So I think that's all from my side then. Let's go back to the studio.